So let's jump in and look at the pros of actually doing an exam chronologically. So from start to end. And the first pro really is that, well, the exam was designed to be done that way. It was designed to be done in a certain way, and so by actually taking it in that way, you're doing it in the way it was designed, and the theory therefore is maximizing the likelihood that you do as well as possible. The other pro here in doing it chronologically is if you jump around, it can be really easy just to forget and miss stuff. I've heard so many stories of students missing pages in exam papers because they've jumped around and used a different approach and they haven't actually tackled it chronologically. And the third reason why it's a pro to do it chronologically is that often you can run out of time, and so it's also adding an extra layer of complexity if you're jumping around the paper in different orders in actually keeping track of where you are in the paper with the time that you have allocated. So it can be really easy, if you do it chronologically, to keep track of the time in where you should actually be to complete the paper in the time that you have in the exam. So they're the pros of why you might want to do an exam chronologically. So what are some of the cons of tackling an exam paper chronologically? Well, I think the first major con is that you can run out of time. You can move through the paper chronologically, get stuck on a question that just proves to be surprisingly tricky, and then you miss out on completing the end of the paper. Now that can have some consequences. The big consequence really can be that those last two questions might have actually been super easy for you. Right? You might have been able to, if you had got there, to be able to complete them, nail it, and get 100%. So in other words, by doing it chronologically, you can actually not maximize your marks across the paper that you know. So this idea here is that you want to get 100% of what you know right, and then try to pick up some marks across the things that are challenging. And if you do it chronologically, it can prevent you from actually achieving that. So there you go, there are some real pros and some real cons in doing it chronologically. What should you do? Well, look, to be frank, I think the first thing is really, to simplify it, doing it chronologically does help, right? There is a huge benefit in simplifying your timing and your process. In saying that though, you don't want to get stuck on a question and lose marks later on. So the variation here that I'm going to suggest is to simply do an if too hard, move on. So set yourself a certain time limit on a question. If you haven't been able to solve it in that certain time limit, you move on. Now the good thing is, because you're still doing it chronologically, you're still keeping it simple and you're still making sure you don't miss anything, but you're still enabling yourself to aim to get 100% of the paper that you do know.